Teams across the NHL are looking to shake up their rosters, and that's going to have major impact on your fantasy ability to build a winner. So you're tapped into the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast to find out just what to do with the top trade bait targets on the market. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. It's your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL news, and betting breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And we see you every dayers. Shout out, salute, much love. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Monday through Friday, you can find Steele and I breaking down everything from around the world of the NHL that's impacting your ability to build a winning squad. That's exactly what we're going to do on Thursday's episode. Taking a look at Frank Saravalli's trade bait board, top 10 players likely on the move, and that could have huge fantasy boom. We'll talk about it. We also got to talk about these Winnipeg Jets. Connor Hellebuyck, Steele, you've been saying it for years now. The number one fantasy goalie in the NHL, fastest to 300 wins other than Andrei Vasilevsky. And I believe, let me bring it up here quick before I turn it over to you, it's Jacques Plante. So pretty good company. We'll talk about the Jets, big-time bets. Over to you, my friend, to take a look at this trade bait board, though, because I'm intrigued to see and hear what you think these players could be doing if they had different city.
Yeah, just based off of Saravalli's top 10 list here for trade bait going into the deadline. I mean, there's some very interesting names. I'm looking at the centerman because that's what a lot of teams look at. For me, it's centerman and right shot defenseman or defenseman in general. So number one, I think Yanni Gord is a very interesting player to keep an eye on for. The Seattle Kraken have struggled all season. They struggled last year as well. This is a guy, a two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Tampa Bay Lightning just 4 years ago. So he knows how to do his job, and he does his job well. He brings a physical aspect to the game. There's a lot of teams out there, a lot of contenders who look for center depth in the bottom six group, potentially even on that second line, depending with injuries, for a player of this caliber. We know that he can bring it at the best stages, like I just said, on the Stanley Cup runs with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Hasn't had his career high of 64 points back with Tampa Bay in 2017. It's been a long time, but offensively, he can chip in with the skill set that he has. It's really that physical aspect and veteran presence you get from this player. He's been good in the faceoff circle when he's on good teams. Seattle has struggled over the last three seasons, so he has struggled with them. But I think he's an interesting player to keep an eye on.
I really love this player, Steele. There is so much to like about Yanni Gord. He has been one of those guys, too, fantasy-wise, week to week. You love yourself a little piece of Yanni Gord, especially in those categorical banger leagues, because a couple of years in a row here, well north of triple digits in hits. He can mix it up. Yeah, the offense, he's a little bit quiet at times. That's not really his game. He's also very impactful to the teammates around him. And I know that's not exactly a fantasy take, but it actually makes me think why he's right up there at the top of the board for Saravalli makes a whole lot of sense. This guy's going to go to a winner. He's a winner. He's a gamer, and he's going to have an impact. I'm looking at this with a slightly different angle. I'm looking at it for a couple of young players that could use a reset, a restart, a change of scenery, whatever you want to throw in there as the adjective or descriptor here. And I can just lump both of my players in together for the most part. But I'll start with Bowen Byram. Left shot, D-man, contract upcoming. I think this has actually been a pretty good season for Bowen Byram, Steele. That's just how bad the Buffalo Sabres have been. I don't think I'm going to say the same for Dylan Cousins when I get to him after I flip it back over to you. But Bowen Byram, 22 points this season, 20 penalty minutes, only 47 shots on net, but the peripherals are there. 62 block shots and 42 hits. I think he actually could eat even more minutes than the 23 in ice time he is playing this year. The Buffalo Sabres are a mess. So I think both of these players fit the bill as trade targets that I want to keep my eye on, because if Bowen Byram goes to a new city, Steele, which I really do think he will, considering his contract is up and he's going to demand a whole lot more money, in my opinion, than I think he's making 3 and change right now. I absolutely love his fantasy value to go right through the roof if he goes to a winner or an offensively inclined team, because the Buffalo Sabres situation is madness.
I don't know if I don't agree with that. I don't think he gets moved. And I
Okay.
know he's on this list, but I mean, after the fact of trading Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram in a 1-for-1 deal, I would find it very odd for the Buffalo Sabres to do that. Clearly, they need to change things up. Maybe they go with your next player in Dylan Cousins that you're going to talk about. But for me, I don't understand if they were to move on from Bowen Byram because he has had a pretty decent season. And it's
Yeah.
not like he has a ton of leverage to go after a lot more money than he deserves in this case. So I mean, he's a great player if he does get traded. I mean, his fantasy value is going to go off if he goes to another contender right now. However, I'm
Right.
not sure if Bowen Byram moves at the trade deadline. I think
Okay.
two guys that I quickly just want to mention. Again, Brock Nelson, obviously the number one guy on this list, is another center depth who we've heard rumors linked to a couple of teams in the Eastern Conference right now. Again, with a team that doesn't score offensively, but as a centerman, you need that center depth going into the playoffs. So I think he's a guy at 33 years old right now. If he were to be traded to a contender, his fantasy value skyrockets, especially in the last
I
month and
agree.
a half of the season.
I agree.
Before I hand it back over to you, the one right shot defenseman in Rasmus Ristolainen could be interesting as well. This is not a guy you're obviously going to keep on your roster fantasy wise, but as a streamer on a week to week basis, depending on where he goes, if he goes anywhere, there's always teams and always contenders looking for right shot defensemen. Big guy, physical, block shots, over 142 block shots a couple years ago, 230 hits. So especially in the playoffs when the tensions rise and the atmosphere changes, you want a guy of his size and caliber, especially in front of the net, to box people out and do his job like that. So I think Rasmus Ristolainen is a guy that you could potentially stream depending if he gets moved.
Considering how close this Eastern Conference wild card race is, Steele, I think we were looking at this the other day. I'm going to bring it up right now. I believe it's so between the first place wild card team right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, 44 points as we head into Wednesday night a little early. So these are going to shuffle slightly. Even the Buffalo Sabres at 35 points, the entire 1 through 10 teams only separated by 9 points. This deep in the season means to me that a lot of these players will be on the move. There's going to be fantasy value to be had here. I say it every week. Keep your finger on the pulse. Keep your ear to the ground. These players are likely to move. Steele disagrees with me a little bit, and Frank Saravalli on Bowen Byram. But the point holds true that if some of these guys get that fresh start and they go to a winner down the stretch, it happens every single season. This isn't a bold prediction. It will happen. If you can get a piece of that kind of boost in fantasy action, especially taking a look at these players, and we'll talk about a little bit more after the break, and Hellebuyck and Betts. That can be the situation that takes your team into the playoffs or even over the top. So keep it tapped to the pod. We'll keep breaking down these angles all the way up until the March trade deadline. We got top 10s, we got special guests, we got all the angles covered that you need to know to keep building these winners. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Steele and I love the live events, sports, music, theater, comedy, combat sports. Steele, sprinkle that in there. Our favorite memories are always at live events, and right now, Game Time has made it even easier for you to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you how incredible deals you can get on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, the follow button as well. We really do appreciate all that love and support you show
Big
us.
time.
Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. We're getting early to the trade bait, looking at the potential fantasy value for your hockey league teams if you were to get into the action sooner rather than later with some of these guys that are potentially traded. Dylan Cousins, though, that is a guy that we heard rumors at the beginning of the season with the Buffalo Sabres, obviously. A guy, a player who has struggled offensively this year. How do you like his value going into, again, we're still 2 months away from the deadline, but a name that cracks the top 5 of Frank Saravalli's list, a guy that his name has been out there swirling a little bit. What do you think the odds are and his value going forward?
So I don't know if you remember this, but one of our first episodes way back now. Hey, by the way, shout out, congrats to 3 years together doing the pod. Couldn't have done it without you. Couldn't have done it without all of our listeners. We've kind of
All
missed the
love, all
boat on
love.
the anniversary, but that's okay. Shout out to everyone out there holding us down 3 years in the making. But one of the first episodes you and I did was young guns in the NHL, 21 and under, and I had Dylan Cousins very high on my list. Has he shown flashes of making me look good about having him there? Yes, but for the most part, Steele, and especially over the last season and change, he has really tapered off. And am I going to put all of that on the culture and what's going on in Buffalo? No, I'm not. But I really do think that this player, along with a much more of a veteran presence, taking nothing away from, he's had looks with Tuck and Thompson and all that. I think this kid explodes with the right kind of setting. And I really do think, because of how bad it's gone in Buffalo this year, this is a guy that would not have been available otherwise. It's a complete debacle in Buffalo, Steel. That's why I don't think anyone's really off the table aside from the Dahleens of the world and
Yeah.
those kinds of main pieces, Thompsons and otherwise. So that's why I think it might be a bit of a fire sale coming out of Buffalo, especially if they keep losing games. However, 68 points in 81 games as a 21-year-old player cannot be overlooked. And the fact that he is only 23, I'm going to let it slide a little bit that this year's 20 points in 41 games is definitely another disappointment, minus 14. It's ugly, but the fact that he's 23, he's an absolute workhorse. I know that's his nickname. 81 hits this year, Steele. His value is still kind of simmering a little bit in fantasy leagues. I think with the move elsewhere, I'm jumping out there and I'm getting me a piece of Dylan Cousins. But that's just me. I could be wrong.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of fantasy owners, hockey fans out there that like Dylan Cousins and his potential. I mean, I don't want to say it's the exact same, but it's eerily similar to what we're seeing from Trevor Zegras. And I know Zegras has dealt with some injuries recently in his professional career. But again, declining in the point totals from 68 to 47, now on pace for only for only 40 points this year. Like you said, minus 14. His penalty minutes have skyrocketed as well. His career high was 55 minutes in 79 games. He's already at 45 and 41. Yeah. The physical aspect isn't there as much. His shooting percentage has gone down over the last 3 years. I agree with you. I think if he were to be traded, and the potential that we've seen him at the World Juniors as well on the international stage in his first couple of seasons was Buffalo. It's there. It's just, like you said with Bowen Byram, sometimes these players just need a change of scenery. Bowen Byram got his last year. Maybe Dylan Cousins needs his this year, and his fantasy value goes up in value. So I like this take on Dylan Cousins. That's why he makes the top 5 on Frank Saravalli's list. Yep. Let's get over the Winnipeg Jets, though, if you're cool with this. Big news from them, both good and bad. Yeah. Let's start with Connor Hellebuyck, because we did talk about Andre Vasilevsky. What was it, like maybe a month ago at this point, 3 weeks ago? I can't remember how long ago it was, but Andre Vasilevsky was the fastest goaltender in NHL history to get 300 wins. Connor Hellebuyck now becomes the 3rd fastest goaltender, right behind Jacques Plante to get 300 wins again. How many games was it in?
538 games for Hellebuyck, which passes Sergei Bobrovsky, Marc-Andre Fleury, Marty Brodeur, and Andy Moog. Other very, very good goaltenders for fastest to 300 steal. You're right. We were talking about Andre Vasilevsky, and I think at his prime, I would have put him just as valuable as Connor Hellebuyck. You could make that argument. He was right there as the number 1 fantasy goaltender. Oh, yeah. But I don't think his numbers probably speak to what we're seeing from Hellebuyck right now. You've been on Hellebuyck since the day I met you talking about fantasy hockey, holding it down. I think I've had some arguments with you about Shesterkin. It's clear who the number 1 goaltender is, fantasy or otherwise. And before I throw it back to you, this guy's leading the NHL in save percentage. He's 1 point behind Anthony Stolarz. He's leading the NHL in goals against, leading the NHL in wins, leading the NHL in shutouts. I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but also to put the cherry on top, halfway through the season, Steele, he's minus 1,300 on FanDuel to win the Vezina Trophy. You might as well give it to him now. But this Winnipeg Jets team overall, I think we need to talk about them as well, Josh Morrissey or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a side note, but if Anthony Stolarz didn't get hurt, he could have given him a run for his money this year. Got to give that shout out to him. Got to give the shout out, but no, Connor Hellebuyck has been nothing but sensational the entire season. He also leads the league in games played goaltenders as well, one ahead of UC Saros and Sam Montembeault
Great
right now.
point.
He's played 33 games in 42. He's played 33 out of 42 games for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean,
Impressive.
it's been incredible, the fact that he's out here and he's putting up these insane numbers, a 926 save percentage, which is at his career high right now, a 2.08 goals against average, his career high currently right now, 25, 6, and 2. The fashion that he's able to do it, it's just so calm, cool, and collected. He makes the big saves, the key saves at the right moment. Connor Hellebuyck, by far the best goaltender in the NHL right now, by far the best fantasy hockey goaltender right now. I just got to leave it at that.
And take this in. Why not? Let's go down the rabbit hole since I do have the odds boards up. Connor McDavid, plus 280, Hart Trophy. Nathan McKinnon, plus 300, Hart Trophy. Kirill the Thrill, plus 310. Leon at plus 550. And now all of a sudden coming in hot at plus 750.
Oh, no.
Steele, if you got a few bucks, no pun intended, left in that account after all those big parlays, plus 750 might be worth it, because if this team keeps rolling and he finishes with the Triple Crown or all of these number one stats, Steele, I have a very good feeling that there is a couple of voters for this award that will give it to Connor Hellebuyck. However, lots of fantasy intrigue with this team right now because Josh Morrissey goes down the other night against Nashville. He's been ruled out for the weekend. You and I have spoken about Josh Morrissey and how, I'll throw this out there, I think I've been a little bit wrong because I thought he's a little bit overhyped or overvalued. I think he's bringing it once again for the importance to this team on the ice, for sure. But also, once again, in the fantasy department, 38 points. He's got 84 shots on net. That's a little bit down from last year. The peripheral numbers are pretty much the same as last year. Hits down a little bit. I don't know what your take is on Morrissey. The injury looked a little nasty. So you're going to have to tap into waiver wire Monday, and we'll help you out there. I have a feeling you're going to need a blue liner. But what's your take on Josh Morrissey? I know how important he is to the Winnipeg's blue line, but what's your fantasy take on this guy? Someone who I think you and I have been pretty critical about.
Well, first of all, I don't want to sell ourselves too short here. I think we definitely said there was going to be some slight regression after a career high.
Okay, so we were somewhat right.
Points. We were somewhat right.
I'll take it.
But again, he's definitely kicking us right now for the season he's having. 38 points in 42 games, on pace somewhere around 70 to 76 points as well. This injury is obviously going to put a dent in it. Like you said, slightly down in the hit category, slightly down in the shot category. So I don't think we were too far off, but he's definitely showing us up a little bit with his skill set and fantasy value currently. Josh Morrissey has been a key factor. I think overall, besides Connor Hellebuyck, I think we overlooked this Winnipeg Jets team from the beginning. Just again, looking at that top six, I remember saying myself at the beginning of the season, I didn't know how much confidence I had in Mark Scheifele, in Kyle Connor, in Gabriel Velarde as that top group, and Nikolai Ehlers. I'll include him too because he gets injured frequently. They would be able to keep that up to a consistent basis, be a top tier goal scoring machine. I believe they finished 16th or 17th in goals for last season, and then being one of the best goals against one of the best defensive groups last year. So they've definitely kicked us in our teeth right now. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele scoring goals at will. Gabriel Velarde's been great on the power play. The defensive group, I know we were critical about them. They've been outstanding as well. Neil Pionk has definitely outshone his fantasy value too. So I don't want to say that we were too wrong here, but we've definitely missed on a couple of things.
Appreciate that. Neil Pionk also, I think, here, have a look at. He's going to have to eat more minutes in terms of that offensive load. I know he's a right shot D-man, but in terms of on that top power play unit, it's got to be Neil Pionk now. So to me, little bit of a boost in value here for fantasy owners with Neil Pionk, or if that's a guy who's been on your bench and you're rotating him in and out, he's got to get in there. If he's out there in your league, probably not. Go and get a piece of Neil Pionk. I think that's the angle here for this fantasy situation with the Winnipeg Jets that are a very good team, Steele. Maybe that was the most overlooked situation. I agree with you there. We're not going to overlook bets, though. Got them ready to ride for tonight's. I believe we got 10 games on tap, Steele. Over to you to take us there, my friend.
We're rocking. We're rolling big time bets into Thursday. But first, This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better at FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more fun. But just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us in the comments, on Twitter as well. We're feeling all that love out there. So thank you so much for that. We got to give the shout out to all of our listeners out there. Flip, real quickly before we get to big time bets, we've talked about the Calder Trophy race. We've talked about the Rocket Richard. We just talked about the Vezina. I think we're going to have to talk about this Norris race because there's a player in the Eastern Conference who I think deserves a lot more recognition than he's getting right now in Zach Werenski and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
100%.
He has been phenomenal.
100%.
So we're definitely going to have to touch on that later this week as well, maybe
that.
early next week. But let's get over to big time bets. 10 games on the schedule. There was a lot of interesting matchups here. I'm actually staying away from all money lines. I've got 3 overs and unders, but I want to see where you're looking first.
First and foremost, how those Toronto Maple Leafs looking, everybody? Yeah, that's right.
Looking pretty good.
Team is playing a different brand of hockey. And am I going to get over ahead of myself? You know, I like to do that. I'm not going to do it, Steele, because like I say to every single person that always likes to rib me about being a Leafs fan, talk to me on April 19th. I'll talk to me on May 5th, and then we'll get into the conversation. But they are looking good. They're playing a very different brand of defensive first, nasty net front presence hockey that wins you games in the playoffs. They're playing a team in Carolina that's also equally as defensively stingy. They actually sit tied for goals against in the NHL at 115. That puts them right there in the top 6 or 7 teams in the league. So this one's jumping right off the page as an under steal. The Carolina Hurricanes are also one of those teams that allow fewer shots than most. Second in the NHL at 25.2 shots against per game. Give me the 6.5, though, in this one, just to play it a little safe. I'm teasing it up to 6.5. I still think we're going to get a pretty good odd here, considering how hot Toronto has been. So give me the under 6.5 between two teams, Steele, that also head-to-head, and I'll turn it back over to you for your pick. Pretty much down the middle in terms of the last 10 games, but of late, extra close games between Carolina and Toronto in terms of under the total. So hit me with the under 6.5 in this one.
Absolutely agree. That's where I'm looking first in this matchup. I've got the Maple Leafs and the Hurricanes under 6.5. That's actually going to be my lock of the night. And I've noticed that recently. I think a lot of us want to see action. We want to see goals, but that's not what tends to happen. There's actually a lot of low scoring games. And if you look at the last week, just specifically, a lot of low-scoring games, especially between these two in the last 10. I believe 6 or 7 out of the last 10 have been under the number. I'm also with you. I'm going to tease it up to under 6.5. Even if I'm getting a low odd, like minus 170, minus 180, I'm completely fine with that. I feel the under 6.5. Wall has been spectacular in the absence of Solars. Kochetkov has very good runs as well. I'm with you with the under 6.5. 2 more picks. I've also got the Stars and the Flyers under 6.5 in this game as well. 7 out of the last 10 have gone under the number. The Flyers have been, Fedottov's actually been pretty good in his last couple of starts. Obviously, that game against the New York Rangers for Jake Ottinger and the Stars was a little bit of a back and forth barn burner, but for the most part, they've got some low scoring games too. I like the under 6.5 in that matchup, and I'm finishing it off with the Golden Knights Islanders under 6.5 as well. These are two teams that play a stingy defensive game. I've got 3 under 6.5 under 6.5 prop parlays or picks for Thursday. So I'm feeling all 3 of those picks going into tonight.
At some point on this schedule, it's going to start tightening. It's been a bit of a wild season, to be honest, but I think you're going to start to see as teams really push towards the playoff here. Steele, I know I'm talking about playoffs and we're having playoffs. We haven't even hit halfway through the season officially, although like most teams have. You know what I'm saying here. It's going to creep up on us like anything. We're talking about the deadline and then boom, it's going to be there. So I like the unders. It's spicy, but I like it. The Edmonton Oilers, look, you and I predicted a few things in this second half. I said Matty Nyes, check. We also talked about how we think the Edmonton Oilers, I thought they were going to come out, shot out of a cannon, just like Ovi, just like Matthews. We're looking pretty good here. The Edmonton Oilers are absolutely cooking, and they roll into Pittsburgh 8-2-0 in their last 10. This one's a slam dunk lock of the night. They just beat the doors off of the Boston Bruins 4-0. Neat and tidy against a pretty good Bruins club on the road. I think Pittsburgh's in for a world of trouble, and that's going to center around my second favorite pick of the night. Although the Oilers are my lock of the night on the money line, I don't care if I have to eat minus 190. I'm going to parlay it with Connor McDavid 2+ points. In his career against Sidney Crosby, he elevates his game much like he does against basically every other player in the NHL. But in his career against Pittsburgh Steel, I looked this one up earlier, and it's juicy. My tabs are letting me down here. Give me 1 second. You know me and trying to butcher these final parts of my parlay push. 15 games, regular season against the Pittsburgh Penguins, almost 30 points for McDavid. So hit me with 2+ points for McJesus, along with Oilers on the money line. And if you want, slap in that under in the Toronto Maple Leafs, Carolina Hurricanes as well.
I love all three of those picks. You know I'm taking the Edmonton Oilers on the money line. You know I love the 2+ points. So I'm feeling all 6 of these going into Thursday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. Show them some love out there. The season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your weekly matchups out there. Hopefully you're winning and you're going to be on the path to championship. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.